Hey guys, and welcome back. I'm Rachel O'Leary, and today we're down in the fish room because I have a lot of work to do, and I thought that while I was doing some work I would give you guys an update, sort of what's going on with my husband, my daughter, my knee, and everything else while we take a look at some fish, maintain some tanks, feed everybody, and just really try and get back into the swing of things down here. Right now I'm only able to get down to the fish room maybe 3 days a week, and that's because of time constraints. For instance, this week I think we had, let's see, 5 PT appointments, 3 pediatrician appointments, a therapy appointment, 2 orthopedic appointments. You get the idea. It's a lot of running around, especially because we live in a pretty rural area, so most of the decent doctors are, half an hour or more away. So I haven't been getting down here to feed as frequently as I like, but every time I do make it down here, I do a series of water changes and feed everyone, and just try and take some time to sit down and watch my aquariums. Now, I've been working on consolidating aquariums, combining fish so that I can break down tanks, because I still want to try and restructure the fish room this year. It's just going to take a bit longer than I had hoped, and I may have to do it myself. We'll have to see. But anyway, let's get started. I'm just going to do some maintenance on my top row here. I can finally climb ladders. I can't climb down, and I can't carry much, but I can at least get up there and back down without too much issue, especially with my handrails here. So I'm going to scoop some duckweed, do some spot cleaning, and then refill all the aquariums and show you guys some updates on some of those fish. And then we'll take a look around at some of the other ones and do a few other tanks as well. So before we get started on that top row, this week I got to spend a little bit of time working on these 2 Nano aquariums that I keep down here in the fish room. Now they both ended up over here on my shipping station because I just didn't have a good spot for them. Smaller tanks don't really work on my racks. It just doesn't make sense, but I wanted to keep both of these aquariums. If you guys remember, I moved this one quite a while ago. This was my old crystal red, crystal black tank, and then this is the one that I think Brooklyn Hardscape made me for 10,000 subs. It's hard to believe that I'm creeping up on 100K at this point. On that note, make sure you guys take a minute to subscribe. My goal was to hit 100,000 before my 3-year anniversary on YouTube, but with this time off, I really don't think it's going to happen. But the more of you that hit subscribe and that notification bell, the closer I get. So this is a little cube that my friends Kevin and Christian made for me. They're from Brooklyn Hardscape. And originally we had it planted with dwarf chainsword, but I pulled those out just because with the amount of dragonstone that's in this aquarium, I was having a very, very difficult time maintaining the substrate. So I just pulled them out and I replanted it with a bunch of Booses, some Anubias, Nana Petite, and Bonsai, and a whole bunch of subwasser tang. And it's doing really, really well. And in this aquarium, I just have a couple, or a trio of wild guppies, and some Amano shrimp, as well as a nearite snail. You can see the male guppy in the middle there. And up here at the top is some chainsword that started growing immersed, some Anubias that's growing submersed, or immersed rather. And then this, I can't remember what kind it is, but it's in the ficus family that's growing out of this back corner that is sectioned off and uses a wicking material to keep things nice and humid. All in all, this tank has been really easy to keep going. I think it's really pretty, and I've really enjoyed having it, and I'm hoping to find a better place for it in the fish room as I redo things. Not that it's problematic here, but like for instance, when I was out with my knee, I'd forgotten to tell my husband entirely to take care of this aquarium. So it didn't get any feeding and it didn't get any water changes, but you can see it doesn't seem particularly harmed by that, and I've gotten it back on track by doing a bunch of small volume water changes. Now this one housed my crystal reds and crystal blacks, but they didn't survive the not being fed or water changed treatment that lasted for about 3 months. So I've moved some Bararis Europhthalmoides or exclamation point rasboras into here, and they seem to really like it. And right now I just have a little power head going to filter things. There's so much plant mass in this little aquarium that I'm not particularly concerned about mechanical filtration. See, there's some Urophthalmoides in that dwarf African water fern. Just a few, oh, there's one down there too by the substrate. And again, both of these aquariums are low light, low tech, no ferts, no CO2, and just meant to be long-term, easy aquariums, and they've both proven to be that. And I think they look kind of neat together sitting here, but again, it takes up part of my shipping station. And one of the goals that I have for the fish room is I think I want to try and move the 150 in order to make this entire section of my fish room be the fish that are for sale, so that I can make this entire wall a row of displays. And I would move the 150 over where these tanks are, so that when I sit here in my chair I can swivel to look at my 150, visit with Captain and all the display tanks, as well as see the big boys. Now in an ideal world I would also move the big boys tank to stop right here, but I had 6 guys with no necks to move it down here, so I just don't see that happening. However, if I do get rid of this rack of tanks here, it would mean that I would have, in theory, room to build a tank much larger for these guys, which is something I plan to do in the next year or two. Anyway, let's get back to work on the top row of aquariums, and I'll tell you a little bit about what's been going on around here. Well, I can tell I'm rusty about filming because I just spent 10 minutes talking about this tank and what's been going on, and I did not have the record button on. So I did the water change on this, and I'll try and recreate, or at least tell you what I did. Now, if you remember correctly, this aquarium houses the black darter tetras and the pygmy cories, and it's all planted with low light plants. Again, no fertilizers, no CO2, and all I do is about a 30% water change every other week. As I mentioned, I've been feeding really, really lightly, so there isn't a bunch of waste. I'll also take my siphon and sort of siphon the sponge to prolong the time in between needing to remove it to clean it. And then I'll hover above where there is exposed substrate to get any detritus that is accumulated there. But in this aquarium, it's very, very little. Now, as the fish start to come out, we'll take a closer look. But I just want to take a minute to really thank you guys. I can't get over how much support I've gotten from you guys, both through the donation button on my website, which has been absolutely amazing, as well as the comments both on Instagram, Facebook, and especially on my videos. It's really been very comforting to know that I do not have to stress about a timeline. Now, I know a lot of you are curious as to how my family's doing. My daughter is doing really well. She's in therapy now, and just having a much better dialogue and understanding of what she's been going through. My older daughter, you know, is also doing super, super well. We get a break from the diving season for a few weeks, which is really nice. My husband has developed, well, about 2 weeks ago, he developed a life-threatening condition called deep vein thrombosis. His entire right arm was filled with giant blood clots that could potentially break off and go to his heart or his lungs, which could prove fatal. Luckily, we caught it soon enough that he was put on blood thinners, and he seems to be doing way better now, and in fact was even able to start physical therapy yesterday. He's going to have to be on that medication for at least 6 months, and this will be a lifelong disease that we'll just have to keep an eye on. But all in all, things are on the upswing. Things are getting way better around here, and I'm hoping to be able to spend more and more time down here in the fish room for you guys. But again, my schedule is going to continue to be erratic until he's back to work and the kids are back to school, and I really just have consistent time to spend down here. As you can see, though, the fish seem to be doing quite well. In fact, when I was siphoning this aquarium, I accidentally siphoned out some fry that I had to add back in there, which was pretty exciting. But yeah, everything's looking good. Everything's starting to go a bit better down here. I get down here a few times a week. I'm able to feed and monitor the fish and catch up on some of the plant maintenance. Now, this aquarium houses those really cool orange and brown Canucks I picked up. the wood-eating species of catfish, as well as the overstock of my green neons, and I think an L236. This tank is a heavy pooping tank, so it requires weekly water changes, and it's one that I've kept in the rotation since I got my knee done. Just because the wood-eating fish produce so much waste, it's really important to keep up on cleaning it. Now I could add some power heads in here that would push all the waste to one side, but I haven't found it necessary as the stocking density is relatively low. So I do about a 40 to 50% water change once a week on this aquarium, making sure that I'm vacuuming underneath the wood and in between these caves. And it doesn't take very long, but it's worth it. And this is an aquarium as well that I have to clean the sponge filter about every 2 weeks, as opposed to about once a month with the lighter stocked, smaller pooping fish, we'll call it. And you can tell that the sponge filters need to be cleaned when their bubble output starts to be compromised, or if you see more and more particulate matter floating, free floating in the water column. It means that it's not as able to filter out all the things you want it to. So we're at about 50%, and I'll start my refill. Now I do set my temperature at my sink, and then I use this power washing hose with a valve on the end to refill. And then I'll take the opportunity to feed this tank and try and see how my fish are doing. Gosh, they're cute. Hopefully we can get a closer look for you guys. Here we can see the Plecos hanging out. Again, even though I just did a water change, there's still a bit of detritus, so I'll probably try and do another one as soon as I can on this aquarium. These guys have at least doubled in size since I got them. And because of the tannins in this water and the lack of much light, it's really difficult to tell how truly gorgeous they are. But I do have plans to breed these fish and eventually move a pair or so into a display so that we can see a bit more of them. Now, as with a lot of Plecos species, not seeing them is pretty normal, as you only really see them during water changes or feeding time as part of their natural, normal, reclusive behavior. This 20 long houses my chili rasboras. As you can see, their aquarium's bare bottom. And this aquarium, I've been making sure it gets at least once a month, 25% water changes, and that's because it's a 20 long with only maybe 20 or 30 of these little fish, which may sound like a lot, but they are absolutely teeny. You can see how beautiful they are. And this tank has a decent, sorry about this light going in and out. This tank has quite a lot of plant matter in it, and again, I'm feeding really lightly. But as you can see, the body condition of the fish is still quite good, and everybody looks really happy and healthy. Next door to the chili rasboras is another 20 long, and the final one in the top row, which houses my Ember Tetras. Again, they're getting water changes about every 3 weeks, about 30%, and being fed 2 or 3 times a week. You can see as well with these guys, they are plenty fat and happy and doing just fine. Now, it's unlikely that I will see breeding behavior from any of the fish on this top row with how low the water changes have been and how infrequent the feedings are. But you can see that their body condition and overall health doesn't seem to be affected at all. So it's working out pretty well. It's more like a prolonged vacation schedule than anything else. So as you can see, we're establishing a new normal around here. I'm getting down here, about every other day to do 10 or 15 water changes. I'm starting to get back into a rhythm of maintaining the plants and feeding the fish, and I really hope within the next month or so to have a firm schedule back in action for you guys. I've wanted to get out to the greenhouse to show you some updates. I have a ton of fry in a lot of the tubs, and I've had a couple of disappointments. But it's been raining like crazy around here. And if you follow me on Instagram, I put up some of the flooding pics from the area. It's really pretty impressive. But when it's really rainy, it's too loud out there to film, even with using editing software to remove the background noise. It's just too much. So hopefully we'll get some dry days this upcoming week, and I can get out there show you an update on my succulent garden, my bog garden, and the bins, as well as the greenhouse. Make sure, again, you're subscribed with that notification bell on, because my schedule is going to be erratic for the foreseeable future, and I really don't want you guys to miss any of my upcoming videos. As always, thank you for this absolute outpouring of love and support that you guys have shown me. And let me know below what you guys would like to see, if there's any particular updates, and as always, if you have any comments, suggestions, or questions.